and he went back to meet the fox. "Goodbye," he said. "Goodbye," said the fox, "and now here is my secret, a very simple secret. It is only with the heart that one can see rightly. What is essential is invisible to the eye."
The myth that has grown up around him is not so much a myth about him as it is about the people who knew him. He said this to me. He was that to me. He made me understand such and such. No.
Jimmy was, as far as I was concerned, not just a friend. He was a brother. He was part of my life. He was... And I had lost everything.
Everybody wants him to be lost and desperate and a rebel. And he didn't rebel against almost anything that I can think of. He loved kids, he loved old people, he loved animals, he giggled a lot. We had a wonderful time.
He's been frozen at age 25, September 30th, 1955, frozen forever at that moment, so he's forever young. We can speculate endlessly on the possibilities of James Dean.
New York, metropolis of the modern, a symbol of progress dipped in neon, and the center of youth culture. Time and time again, the city has generated impulses which have influenced the whole world. Even a few years after World War II, when young people were finding themselves in a crisis, traditions and values had begun to crumble. These youths were stranded somewhere between childhood and adulthood and did not know where they were heading. But their drive to break away from the established mainstream was enormous. They were looking for ways to express themselves through images, voices, personalities and faces which could represent their new attitude to life. James Dean was one of these. He became an icon of a changing attitude, which at first was a non-political rebellion. On the trail of an actor who was more than that, James Dean died at just 24 years of age. Although he has left us with just 3 films and a portfolio of photographs, he has become a legend deeply embedded in the images we make of him for ourselves. Who was this James Dean? His favorite book was The Little Prince by Antoine de Saint-Exupéry. No coincidence, really. the little prince falls from the sky to discover the paralyzingly conform world of grown-ups. He views the world through the eyes of a child and sees things which grown-ups no longer notice. Only a child's mind can create a magical world like a...
I, James Byron Dean, was born February 8, 1931, Marion, Indiana. My parents, Winton Dean and Mildred Dean, formerly Mildred Wilson, and myself, existed in the state of Indiana until I was 6 years of age. Dad's work with the government caused a change, so Dad, as a dental mechanic, was transferred to California. There we lived until the 4th year. Mom became ill and passed out of my life at the age of 9. I never knew the reason for Mom's death. In fact, it still preys on my mind.
A break in his otherwise matter-of-fact tone. His mother plays a crucial role in the family from the beginning, whilst his father is the very personification of prude authority. Nothing particularly special. The early years reveal an apparently intact country family idyll. After moving to Los Angeles, his mother took closer control over his upbringing. She introduced her only child systematically to the worlds of art and literature. His mother stimulated his dreams and encouraged his longing for higher things.
Wenn man das psychoanalytisch betrachten will, dann ist auffällig, dass eine besondere Sorte Mutterfigur im Hintergrund erstmal entscheidend ist als Antriebsmotor, um eine ganz bestimmte Entwicklung einzuschlagen. Also Rebellion gegen den Vater, für die meisten Jugendlichen in patriarchalischen Familien sowieso eine Sache, die auftaucht. Die meisten brechen aber irgendwann ab und unterwerfen sich dem. Oder sie haben Glück, dass ein etwas schwächerer Vater sich zurückzieht in den Hintergrund und das Kind der Mutter überlässt, die das sozusagen am Kragen packt und sagt, aus dir soll mal was werden. Und zwar nicht irgendwas, sondern der oder das Größte.
This later resulted in James Dean's notable artistic pursuits. He becomes fascinated with painting and above all with sculpture. He becomes passionate about acting and develops from very early on an almost narcissistic relationship to the camera. The photograph becomes his medium for self-expression, as well as for professional poses.
This one is very popular. Obviously, every photographer who took pictures of him were influenced by what he did. He would not allow any photograph taken of him that didn't mirror what he wanted to see. This one was his idea. He was a delight for a photographer because the photographer didn't have to do anything creative. He did all the creativity. The photographer, in this case, me, all I did was push the button. But the creativity was his. And he did that, in my opinion, with all the photographs he posed for.
This provocative self-dramatization stems from tragic roots in his childhood. He is wrenched out of the symbiotic relationship with his mother when he suddenly discovers that she has terminal cancer. The 9-year-old child is stunned at seeing his mother agonizingly wasting away and eventually dying. James Dean never managed to overcome this forced separation from his mother. Indeed, his lifelong search for her became a significant drive in later life. The death of his mother was not the only trauma. His father sent him away to relatives in Indiana. James Dean could not come to terms with this second separation. It resulted in the defiant revolt against his father's authority. This, together with his desperate attempts to gain fatherly love, became the template for his later rebelliousness. For a time, he is looked after by the Winslow family in Fairmount. Marcus Winslow, a cousin of James Dean, remembers him as being a normal boy.
He wasn't rebellious when he lived here. He was very normal, and I don't think anyone from Fairmount could say that they remember him being rebellious. Jimmy had lived here for 3 years when I was born. So Jimmy's just like an older brother to me. He was someone that was always here when I was a child, and I can remember him going to high school and riding his little motorbike to school, and he'd take me for rides on his motorbike.
Mildred Carter, whose late husband gave Dean his first motorbike, also confirms the impression of him being a normal boy.
Well, he was just like a kid to me, and if he needed something, why, he would call up. They always stopped my house first. He was always hungry, but he was just a nice kid. A lot of people thought he was lazy, but he wasn't lazy. He'd get jobs, see, and then he'd get other guys to do the work, and then they'd divide the money up. So he wasn't really lazy. He was just, Jimmy was just Jimmy. He liked speed. Speed was his middle name. Take care. Have a safe trip.
Despite the appearance of intimacy, a stinging sense of loss was lingering deep inside James Dean, a feeling which motivated him for the rest of his life. The constraints of small-town life made him feel claustrophobic. He was longing to return to the black earth of Indiana at some later point, and now and again he would go there, back to his roots. He was, however, just about tolerating the home sweet home idol of rural life, as his following poem reveals.
My town likes industrial impotence. My town's small, loves its diffidence. My town thrives on dangerous bigotry. My town's big in the sense of idolatry. My town believes in God and his crew. My town hates the Catholic and the Jew. My town's innocent, sophistic caper. My town's diligent, reads the newspaper. My town's sweet, I was born bare. My town is not what I am. I am here.
Eventually the lights go down, and everyone stares spellbound at the screen. They begin to notice that something very different is happening there.
The first shot of James Dean in that film feels like a new presence on screen. I mean, the acting is so persuasive. The physical language, sprawled out on the street, clutching the teddy bear. He seems so exposed, the actor himself, so present. The emotion is so full and rich, and it's right there for the camera. It is the birth of a great new style in acting, which I like to think is now the American style. And James Dean is one of the great authors of that new style of American realism.
Here he is curled up in a fetal position holding a monkey. It's sort of like it also refers to evolution. We're actually descended from the adolescent ape. So in a way, we've now fulfilled our evolutionary destiny. But he is curled up on that floor there. It's the beginning of a new culture. He's being born. Essentially, the culture of the 50s arose from the war and the Depression. It was what I call the fat dream. We materially had everything we could conceivably want: 2 cars, washing machines, and people began to think, what is life about? What is the sort of meaning of life? And at the same time, you had the bomb threat where, supposedly the world was going to end, so that, in a way, teenagers thought, adults have completely fucked up, and, it's going to blow the earth apart, and we might as well, have this sort of end-of-the-world party. And, hence rock and roll, the beatniks, Kerouac, James Dean. James Dean, because he's a movie actor, he could show the next generation this new creature, the kind of mutant type that would become the standard for the 60s, 70s, and on, through punk of American culture. He's essentially a composite character. I mean, he is composed of a little bit of a juvenile delinquent, a little bit of a beatnik, a little bit of a farm boy, a little bit of the sensitive, lost kid who writes poetry. And he fused all these American types together into this like almost perfect golem of adolescence, this creature that everybody wanted to be.
What's your road, man? Holy Boy Road, Madman Road, Rainbow Road, Guppy Road, any road. It's an anywhere road for anybody, anyhow. Where, buddy, how? You gotta look out for your boy. He ain't a man, unless he's a jumping man. Do what the doctors say. I'll tell you, Sal, straight. No matter where I live, my trunk's always sticking out from under my bed. I'm ready to leave everything out of my hands. We know time, how to slow it up and walk and dig and just old-fashioned spade kicks. What other kicks are there? We know. Jack Kerouac, On the Road.
Go west. James Dean heads in this direction too, landing in Los Angeles. He wants to be an actor. Bill Best, his later friend, experienced James Dean's first attempts on the theater stage.
I was going to UCLA. I was in the theater arts department at UCLA, and we were doing a production of Macbeth, Shakespeare's Macbeth. And there was a young actor, a student actor, who was playing the king. The king had a long speech, and he opened his mouth and started his speech, and it was absolutely terrible. I've never heard anything so awful. He was speaking with a very thick Indiana farm boy accent. He didn't know how to pronounce many of the words in the speech, they're English references. And I started to laugh, and I did say something rude. I said, "Who's the hick from Indiana there with the kilt on and his knees showing? He's terrible. Doesn't know how to speak." Well, within about a month of the time we met, Dean got closer to me. So he said, "Well, why don't we find a place together?" Well, I hardly knew him, but I thought, well, it's better than where I'm living now, and I said, okay, we will. He then said about telling me on this bus ride his vision of life.
I've never told this to anyone else. I guess I always thought people would say I was crazy. Have you ever had that feeling that it's not in your hands? I mean, do you ever just know you've got something to do and have no control over it? I don't know exactly what it is yet. When that time comes, I'll know. It's like I know I want to be an actor, but that isn't it. That's not all. Just being an actor or a director, even a good one, isn't enough. There's got to be more than just that. If you start accepting the world, letting things happen to you, around you, things will happen like you never dreamed they'd happen. I don't want to be just a good actor. I don't even want to be just the best. I want to grow and grow and grow so tall nobody can reach me. Maybe this sounds crazy or egocentric or something to you, but I think there's only one true form of greatness for a man. To me, the only success, the only greatness for a man is in immortality.
That's pretty wonderful.
I don't know whether you're trembling or whether I'm trembling.
I think it was
Isn't it exciting, though?
just great.
It's just wonderful. We're both very thrilled, I'm sure.
The poetry of dreams is followed by the prose of a young and nameless actor. Perhaps one of the cruelest ironies in James Dean's short history was his first professional engagement, a tiny part in a Pepsi Cola commercial.
Let's join the Pepsi crowd. Pepsi-Cola hits the spot. A big, big bottle and it's got bounce, 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 bounce. Go get Pepsi for the Pepsi bounce.
Shortly afterwards, he played the role of the Apostle John in a television film.
I suggest we leave these precincts and go back to Galilee, where we belong.
Good suggestion, Andrew. Well spoken, Andrew.
Now that's wisdom. Surely we did not spend 3 years following the Master to return again to our nets. Was it for this the Master sent us out to cure the sick, cast out devils?
Must I remind you, John, that the Master is dead, with Roman soldiers pacing at his grave, and from what I hear, a monstrous rock sealing it.
New York, the eastern metropolis of the USA. In Manhattan's jungle, Dean discovered an assortment of trends and lifestyles, which he greatly enjoyed and greedily adopted. Creativity, the feeling of losing oneself in a strange sea and discovering the need to transform all of this rough and naked life into some sort of shape and style. It is written that the insecure young actor arrived in Manhattan in 1952, where he first stayed at the Hotel Iroquois. Hardly venturing out of his room, the city felt so strange to him.
I was so confused during the first weeks there that I only hung around Times Square, a couple of blocks from my hotel. I watched 3 films a day to escape from my loneliness and dejectedness.
His passionate interest in observing daily life going on around him, combined with his extrovert tendencies, convinced him that both of these obsessions were leading to just one thing, that of turning real life into art. His hungry mind started to search for entry into the intelligentsia. He devoured lots of literature. When Bill Best came over to New York a few months later, he was surprised to realize that James Dean had changed once again.
Jimmy had changed a great deal when we met in New York. He was now in a position to teach me a few things, which the tables had turned a bit, which was fine. I needed it. I enjoyed it very much. We were living together and we were able to do an awful lot of things together, and he had developed a circle of very, very talented and very interesting friends, very intellectual friends, who met frequently next door to our hotel. And so I got to meet some of those people through Jimmy. And we developed a different kind of friendship and relationship. Now we were on more equal footing. He wasn't the backward rube from Indiana anymore. He had passed me up a little bit, you see, so I had some catching up to do.
Despite all the transformations which were happening to James Dean during this time, he still remained the erratic and somewhat introverted character who was searching for himself. Perhaps he was looking for an image he could feel at ease with. Bill Best and James Dean moved into an apartment close to Central Park together with the dancer Liz Sheridan, a trio experiencing average professional success. The uncomplicated Dizzy got involved in a short love story with James Dean, which started rather prosaically.
He looked sort of abandoned. And I thought he was very cute, but I thought he was very funny. And he giggled a lot. But I didn't go, oh, my heart, stop, he's handsome. And no. We did something that young girls don't do in the 50s. I moved in with him, and yes, we slept in the same bed, and we had a romance like everybody else, and I was his girlfriend, and he was my first true love, I think, and we were really inseparable for a while. There was a movie a long time ago called Les Enfants Terribles, about a brother and sister who lived in an attic, and it was incestual, but it was sort of a beautiful affair that they had, and they kept the world out, and that was part of our problem, is that you can't, not for very long, keep everybody out. You have to join the world. And that was one of the problems, I think, with us, that as soon as the world started taking over Jimmy's life and he became famous,
James Dean made a point of provoking his numerous friends. He would meet them in an assortment of circumstances and deliberately not let them know of each other's existence. Sometimes he got close to people only to abruptly drop them again. He immersed himself into brief and intense affairs, or resorted to abstruse innuendo in order to bring someone under his erotic spell.
He said, get dressed. You're going to go to the Astor Bar on Broadway, and you're going to go to the bar and you're going to order a drink and you're going to see what happens. Well, I knew perfectly well what was going to happen. I had been to the Astor Bar, and it was a place where men picked up men or boys picked up boys. And I thought, I don't know, what do I do? I mean, we had this secret from one another. And I had to go to the Astor Bar, and I had to stand at the bar and have a drink. And indeed, someone approached me and suggested that we go home together. And I said, excuse me, I have to call a friend. I called Jimmy, and I said, what do I do now? You know, I really don't want to do this. And he said, well, if you don't want to do it, for heaven's sakes, don't do it. Don't ever do anything you don't want to do. Come home. And when I got there, Jimmy wasn't there. On my pillow, there was a copy of The Little Prince by Antoine de Saint-Exupéry. Pinned to it was a note from Jimmy. And the note read, for a gift, one is always beholden. And it was a mystery, and I didn't know what he was up to, and I didn't know what he meant by it. I read the book, and I had never read it before. And it devastated me. I thought it was probably one of the most wonderful things, gifts anyone had ever given me. And it's odd because Jimmy and I never discussed that.
This happiness did not last for long. A disappointed Bill Bast soon returned to Los Angeles. Dean was restless and hung around Times Square, where the buzz of activity inspired him to put shrill, poetic pictures to paper.
Stand-up comedy show passes.
In the thoughtfulness of the night, the cheap, monotonous, shrill and symbolic, suggestive and sensual drumming tattoos orgiastic images into my brain. The stench of gin and 90-cent beer entwines with the occasional mysterious slowness, occasional ongoing calm, sometimes motionless, sometimes intensely painful, to the long-awaited leaps and contorted movements which meanwhile refill the dense chewing gum fog with the perfume of sweat. The guests are hardly able to disguise their delight. This damn 7 days a week virgin beast curtsies with the equilibrium of a drunken Pavlova. An aura of terror. I live above it and below it. Now it is 7:30. Monday morning is my divine comedy, the Dante of 52nd Street.
How can so much chaos in life turn into art? Dean's answer to that is original and astounding. He made himself the subject of his art with photography. Roland Barthes says that a photograph conveys the very premonition of death and its mythical conquest. The myths about James Dean were eternalized by the New York photographer Roy Schatt. He and Dean were inspired by one another. Elaine Schatt, the widow of Roy, remembers her first meeting with Dean.
The first time he came here, there was a couch over there. He sat on the end of the sofa. He was all scrunched up. But then they started talking about the play he was in, and that was The Immoralist with Geraldine Page. And he got up and did a dance with scissors, and he was just as graceful, and it was like night and day. When he got up to perform, he was a different person. My husband never saw any of his movies until after his death. Then he realized what a great actor he was.
Remembering legends from pictures is not always the same as having experienced them. In Roy Schatz's apartment, we also meet Bob Heller, a former fellow actor of James Dean. His memories of the legend seem more ambivalent.
Live fast, die young, and have a good-looking corpse. I mean, Marilyn Monroe died young and beautiful, and you know, they didn't have a chance to wrinkle or get fat like Mr. Brando or get in a car accident like Montgomery Clift. Dean died when he still had most of his teeth in his head, you know.
Jimmy didn't have front teeth. They were knocked out when he was young in an accident. Fell from a tree or something.
No, motorbike.
A motorbike.
Yeah.
So when they went out one time, they had a drink, an alcoholic drink. And Jimmy took out his teeth and put them in the drink. He was always doing funny little things like that.
That photograph was testing a new fast film. Jimmy was a prop. He said, would you walk down the street? I want to see how much light I can get at this new fast film. Roy was testing film. He was not shooting James Dean. Nobody else knows this.
But Jimmy,
I was there.
The photographs will prolong the life of Jimmy Dean, you know, for all time. I think that the photographs are even more important than the films.
For movies, however, the magic formula for young actors at the time was method acting. A drama class demonstrates this style.
Method acting is definitely a technique. That's why it's called method. It's a methodological approach to a character or a script. The method, however, deals with the self, an extended confrontation of the self, and the ability to express what is happening with you, the actor, with you, in the moment.
Go right into him. Go ahead.
The belief was that the more personal the experience, the broader understanding it would create. I tell all of my young men to watch him because I can't teach them that passage, but I feel that James Dean can. That, you know, that really the extended confrontation with yourself through the expression of a character is very exquisite, sublimely exquisite in his performances.
The Court Theatre on Broadway provided the stage for James Dean's first steps as an actor. In his first play, he acted a young man who was being dominated by his mother. She kept him in a cage in order to protect him from an immoral world. The critics are bowled over after the premiere. Some show their uneasiness at the new and expressive performance of Dean. Shortly afterwards, he takes part in a play by Jean Genet at the Royal Theatre, The Immoralist. The climax of the plot, about a gay married couple, offered James Dean an ideal opportunity to prance across the stage like a lascivious flibbertigibbet in a short scene, anticipating the pelvic jerking with which Elvis would later confront the American establishment. James Dean had achieved his goals in the theater. After a performance, he would ride his motorbike around a few blocks on Broadway. His sudden encounter with success made him start to escape into speed. In the last year of his life, all his dreams seemed to be coming true. Hollywood was introduced to the young actor by one of its greatest directors, Elia Kazan. James Dean found himself back on a plane again, flying to Los Angeles. Not as a young dreamer this time, but as an up-and-coming star. When he got there, he remembered his old friend Bill Best again.
I was here for a number of months, a few months, when one morning I was awakened from my sleep with a banging on my door, and it was Jimmy. He was in from New York. What had happened was that I said, "What are you doing here? Aren't you supposed to be in New York?" And he says, "No, I've come out here. I'm going to do a movie for Kazan, Elia Kazan." And I said, "It's incredible. What are you talking about?" And it was East of Eden he had been hired for.
It's the decade's most daring novel.
I was so overwhelmed with his performance, so completely shattered by the enormity of what was on that screen, by what he had been capable of doing himself, and by the extraordinary power of the picture, too, that when it was over, I got out of the theater. I didn't even see him. I wouldn't go. He signaled to me and said, "Come on, we're going to go to a party." And I said, "No, I've got to go." And I ran to my car and I went and I drove home. And I did the most ridiculous thing. All of the ambition and all of the struggle of the 5 years together just sort of welled up in me, and the realization that it could really happen to this degree and that it was so big and so important was overpowering. And I went into the bathroom and I sat in the empty bathtub and I started to cry with just sort of a kind of relief and amazement, and I don't know what it was. And then there was a knocking on my door, and it was Jimmy. And he said, "Come on, you've got to come to the party. You've got to come to the party. I thought you were coming to the party. Come to the door, let me in." Well, I just couldn't. And he climbed in a window. And he came in and he found me in the bathtub crying. And what he said essentially is that for me or for you? I said a little of both.
Rebel Without a Cause, James Dean's next film, a timeless story of teenage rebellion. After the success of East of Eden, Dean's lust for speeding raised its dangerous head again. Despite protests from worried producers and directors, he bought a Porsche, racing it up into the Hollywood Hills in an attempt to get back to himself again. His life became out of sync, and he started to submerge into an artificial world where the differences between fiction and reality were blurred. Movie City Los Angeles had the final say. We experience him ever increasingly seeking thrills in bars and studios and on short trips to New York. All of these strategies in his life are meant to increase the intensity of it, but instead they become drenched with self-doubt. Has he now become a star? Or does he need to stand at the back of the queue of Hollywood greats? He He accelerates the time he has left by participating in numerous races through the Californian desert, intoxicated with childhood dreams.
I want to outgrow this small and restricted world we live in. I want to leave everything behind me. I want to try and get somewhere where everything is just perfect.
For James Dean, getting back to reality now means live and die in Hollywood. Questions need to be asked. Is it at all possible to revolutionize cinema by playing a rebellious little prince, as he had done in both his films so far? His final film marks another turning point, Giant, a confrontation with the full-powered presence of Hollywood.
Liz and Rock, today's two most exciting stars, in the only picture big enough to bring them together, Giant. And one of the great motion picture experiences of all time.
The stars of the film, Elizabeth Taylor and Rock Hudson. James Dean, who was still alive when this trailer was made, is hardly mentioned. However, Dean's performance in this film set in Texas during the oil boom is breathtaking. It is an attempt to undermine the values of Hollywood.
Yes, James Dean was, in a sense, working against the film. He's often off to the side or behind other people. You're not at the center. It's as if he's in a play of his own. But then he comes forward and he makes everybody else play his drama. He's a subversive. He would be very dangerous to play against if you were a very rigid actor and did everything the same way all the time. You have to be prepared for his surprises.
When Giant was eventually aired in the cinemas in 1956, James Dean had been dead more than a year. And of course, he was the star of it now.
You start with Eden, you know, like Adam and Eve, and then you go on to sort of the rebellion, which is similar to the American Revolution, you know, freeing ourselves from the old world. And then you get to Giant, which is the, you know, what happens when sort of all your dreams come true, you know, like the Hollywood. This is sort of, in a way, what might have happened to James Dean had he lived and stayed in Hollywood. And somebody almost completely missing the point of the movie, you know, it's not about Rock Hudson and Elizabeth Taylor characters. It's about Jet Rink. Jet Rink is the American redneck who says, you know, to hell with all this bullshit.
You know what you can do?
The Last Supper, The Last Journey. How are myths created? Through facts which suddenly become significant? 1:30 p.m. A stop at a petrol station. An acquaintance takes a photo of James Dean. The Porsche is refueled. 3:30 p.m. Just before Bakersfield. The police officer OTV Hunter overtakes the Porsche, pulls it to the roadside, and gives James Dean a ticket for speeding. 5 p.m. A 15-minute break at Blackwell's Corner. James Dean buys a bag of apples and a Coke. Then, back onto the Interstate 466. James Dean forgets to strap on his safety belt. From the memories of Beverly Wills, a friend of Dean.
I kissed him on the cheek, wished him all the best, and watched him going down the street. He kicked a few stones in front of him, just like a little boy, stopping under a street lamp to light a cigarette. Then he straightened his shoulders, turned the corner, and was gone.
At the crossing of the 466 and 41, they see it coming, a massive black and white Ford.
The little prince climbed a high mountain. "Who are you?" said the little prince. "Who are you? Are you? Are you?" answered the echo. "Oh, be my friend. I am all alone," he said. "I am all alone, alone, alone," answered the echo.
How are myths created? Perhaps through stories which turn into pictures, through pictures which turn into icons, and icons which turn into myths. Myths everyone can share in.
The secret of his success is that he performed with such intimacy that people felt they knew him, and everybody who liked James Dean fantasied a relationship with him.
He was the sensitive little prince who lives on his own asteroid, and also he's the little bastard. He was a disturbed character. He was not, you know, a simple, charming, easygoing guy.
He was a loner, but he wasn't lonely. Do you understand?
All the things that went on, not one single thing detracted from either my admiration for Jimmy or my love for Jimmy. He was a wonderful, superb friend.
Ich würde Dean nicht auf der Schiene cool anlegen. Weder als Erfinder noch als Verkörperer.
Well, after all these years, and Dean becoming the big international icon that he has become, and the marketeers and merchandising of the lapel pins, the wristwatches, the pillows with his image on the pillows, I believe, I cannot prove it, but I believe if Dean were alive today and saw all this, his reaction would probably be, "Oh, shit."
What has this James Byron Dean left us with? Has he, despite all explanation, really become a myth in the end? Modern society has lost its myths, say the philosophers, which explains why it is constantly hunting for them. James Dean remains a contemporary phenotype. He reflects our inconsistencies, as well as allowing us insight into a different life, a flickering star. Sometimes, the curtain of reality opens, and we are able to see players in what appears to be a finale. The film has come to an end. The cinema has emptied. The light through the celluloid frames extinguished. We are free to watch whatever we want to. The essentials are invisible.